You have done this at least once. You stood in front of 2 loaves of bread and picked the one with gluten-free on the front, because it felt like the healthier choice. On almost everything your body actually needs, it wasn't. Nearly a third of Americans have tried to cut gluten out of their food. Fewer than 1 in 14 have any medical reason to. And the number one reason people give for doing it is good health. So here is what you are getting. How a bread famine in the middle of a war accidentally saved a ward of dying children. What gluten is physically doing inside a grain of wheat. Why pulling it out drags something else out with it. And what happened when someone built 2 perfect diets side by side. One with gluten, one without. There is also one single nutrient where the gluten-free version genuinely wins. Just one. Most people guess wrong about which. I am not telling you until the end. Start with your own kitchen. 2 slices of toast, butter, whatever you put on top. That toast is the most ordinary thing in your day, and it is also the middle of a fight that has been running for 80 years. That fight starts in the Netherlands in the winter of 1944. A rail strike and a German blockade cut the country off. The bread runs out. People are boiling tulip bulbs to eat. In a children's hospital, there is a ward nobody can explain. The children in it are skeletal. Their bellies are swollen, and their food passes straight through them. Doctors have watched children like this die for decades. And then, in the worst winter the country has ever had, they start getting better, not slightly. Color comes back into their faces. The ward with no bread is the ward that recovers. The pediatrician watching this is Willem Dick. When the Allies dropped bread from planes in 1945, his patients relapse within days. He has his answer. It was never the hunger. It was the wheat. That is celiac disease. Your immune system reads a protein in wheat as an invader and attacks the lining of your own small intestine. Picture the inside of your gut as deep velvet. Celiac sands it flat. Flat means nothing gets absorbed. You can eat and still starve, which is exactly what those children were doing. There is still no drug for it. 80 years later, the only treatment is the one Dick found by accident. So how does the only treatment for a rare autoimmune disease end up printed on a bottle of water? Jump forward. Walk into a supermarket today and gluten-free is not a medical aisle. It is a marketing font. Here's the ranking. Gluten-free bread makes sense. Gluten-free oats make sense too, because mills get cross-contaminated. And then there is gluten-free bottled water, which has never contained a molecule of gluten. That is not a manufacturer being silly. It works, and it works because of something worth naming. Call it the health halo. One good-sounding word on the front of a package quietly upgrades everything else inside it in your head. You see gluten-free, and you do not just think no gluten. You think lighter. Cleaner. Fewer calories. More fiber. Better for you somehow. Nobody printed any of that on the bag. You supplied it. And right about now, you are probably thinking the obvious thing. Hang on. Isn't gluten-free supposed to be healthier anyway? It is the reasonable assumption. It is also the thing most people have backwards, and the rest of this is about why. Because to know what leaves your plate when the gluten goes, you first have to know what it was doing there. Step back for a second. Wheat has been feeding people for about 10,000 years, and for most of that time, bread was not a lifestyle choice. It was the floor under everything else. It paid wages. Cities were organized around who controlled the flour. So when a food that old suddenly gets treated as a threat, that is worth being curious about instead of certain. Go and knead a lump of wheat dough for 10 minutes. It changes under your hands. It starts sticky and shapeless, then turns springy and almost rubbery. Pull it, and it pulls back. Stretch a piece thin enough and light passes through it like a membrane. Bakers call that the window. What you are looking at is gluten. Call it the scaffolding. Gluten is a stretchy protein web that forms the moment flour meets water, and it traps the gas from the yeast, so the bread rises instead of spreading out flat. Every hole in a slice of bread is a bubble that Webb held in place. No scaffolding, no holes. No holes. And you are eating a cracker. So, a gluten-free baker has a structural problem. The scaffolding is gone and something has to hold the loaf up. The answer is starch. White rice flour, potato starch, and tapioca, held together by a gum that imitates the stretch. That is what is inside most gluten-free bread. And here is the quiet part. A grain of wheat has 3 layers: a tough outer coat, a tiny embryo, and a big starchy middle. The outer coat is the fiber. The embryo carries the folate and the magnesium and the vitamin E. The starchy middle carries almost none of it. Whole wheat keeps all 3. Refined rice flour is essentially that middle layer on its own. So the swap is not gluten for no gluten. It is a whole grain traded for a stripped one. Which raises the question nobody asks at the checkout. What exactly are you giving up? If you have ever stood in that aisle wondering whether the expensive loaf is doing anything for you, subscribe. That is the whole point of this channel. So what are you actually giving up? Start with the one thing everybody has heard of and almost nobody gets enough of. Fiber is the part of a plant your body cannot break down. It goes in one end and comes out the other largely untouched, which sounds useless until you look at what it does on the way through. Call it the fiber gap. It is the distance between what a human gut is built to receive and what modern food actually hands it. On the way through, fiber slows how fast sugar hits your blood. It drags cholesterol out with it. It fills you up before the calories do, and it feeds the bacteria living in your colon, which are not optional. Most people in wealthy countries already fall well short of what they need. Fiber is one of the nutrients we are most reliably missing before anyone changes a single thing about their diet. So what happens to that gap when you take wheat out of the picture? For a long time, nobody could answer that because nobody was seriously asking. Gluten-free went from hospital diet to global market in about 15 years. Tennis players credited it for titles. Actors credited it for their skin. Somewhere in there it stopped being a treatment and turned into a personality. Ask 10 people why they buy it, and you get the same handful of answers. It feels lighter. It helps with bloating. It is just cleaner. Almost nobody says a doctor told them to. And this is bigger than one shopper being mildly overcharged for bread. Multiply your loaf by 1/3 of a country, and you are describing how a whole population eats. There is also the group nobody thinks about. People who genuinely have celiac disease get no choice at all. Whatever a gluten-free diet does to a body, they are living inside the answer for the rest of their lives. And one more thing the front of the package never mentions. Gluten-free versions usually cost more, sometimes 2 or 3 times more, for the same weight of food. Earlier attempts to check whether that money bought anything just read the panels on the back of packets. Roughly the same calories, roughly the same everything, a little less protein. But a panel on one packet is not a diet. What matters is not a single loaf. It is everything that lands on your plate across a whole year. So what happens when you take a diet that is genuinely healthy and simply make it gluten-free? That is the first of 2 things the team behind this video did, and it is beautifully simple. The American government publishes example menus showing what an ideal day of eating looks like. 7 of them built around 2,000 calories. A dietitian went through those menus line by line and swapped every wheat item for the closest gluten-free version on a real shelf. A whole wheat English muffin becomes a brown rice English muffin. Same meal, same calories, different aisle. Then they weighed the 2 versions of the perfect day against each other. Same guidelines, same portions, same honest attempt to eat well. The gluten-free version came out lower in protein, lower in magnesium, lower in potassium, lower in vitamin E, and lower in folate, which is the one you may know from pregnancy advice. Those 4 are not a random list. They sit on the short roster of things people in wealthy countries are already running low on. The healthy menu got measurably less healthy just by changing the flour. Two weaker hints pointed the same direction: a little less calcium, a little more fat. But a menu on paper is not a person. What do people who actually live this way eat? So they went looking for the real thing. 7 separate studies, all from Europe, where people wrote down everything they ate for up to a week. On one side, adults with celiac disease eating gluten-free because they have to. On the other, matched people eating normally, 40 or more in every single group. Pooled together, the gluten-free diets came out higher in calories, higher in fat, lower in folate again, and dramatically lower in fiber. Fiber is where it stops being subtle. Across those studies, it is the single biggest gap between the two ways of eating, larger than any other difference on the table. And it is the one that survives everything. Once you allow for the fact that the studies disagree with each other, most of the differences soften up. The fiber gap does not budge. Which leaves the promise from the beginning, one nutrient where gluten-free genuinely wins. It is salt. The gluten-free menus landed around 330 milligrams of sodium lower per day. That is roughly what you save by not salting one plate of food. One win. On the other side of the ledger sit fiber and folate and protein and magnesium and potassium and vitamin E, plus more fat and more calories. Now the honest part. The real-world eating data comes from people with celiac disease, and not from the much larger crowd choosing this without a medical reason. And it watches what people already do rather than testing the two diets head-to-head. So on its own, it cannot prove the diet caused anything. What it does kill is the idea that the label is an upgrade. Outside of salt, it never was. None of this is an argument against gluten-free food. For the children in that Dutch ward and everyone diagnosed since, it is the difference between living and not. It is an argument about what a label is. A label tells you what a food does not contain. It has nothing at all to say about what it does. Health is not something you can subtract your way into. Every time you take one thing off your plate, something else moves in to fill the space. And that something is what is actually feeding you. So next time you are standing in that aisle, do not read the front of the bag. Turn it over. The story is on the back.